Evan, let me make this perfectly clear, my boss said, leaning back in his leather chair, smugness dripping from every word. You don't run this place. I do. And if you ever challenge me again, you won't just lose overtime, you'll lose your job. You'll be nothing. That sentence cut deeper than any insult I'd ever heard. After years of loyalty, after sacrificing holidays, birthdays, and sleep for this company, I was told I was disposable. A pawn. But here's what he didn't understand. The moment he tried to break me with fear, he gave me the reason to fight. And when I fought, I didn't just protect myself. I dismantled the very foundation he thought made him untouchable. Before I tell you how I went from humiliated to victorious, subscribe to Lawful Payback and comment where you're watching from. Because what I uncovered turned one man's legacy into ashes, and it all started with a careless threat. My name is Evan Marshall. I'm 41 years old, living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. For almost 12 years, I worked as a maintenance supervisor at a regional hospital. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest and it paid the bills, barely. Every morning I clocked in before sunrise, managing repairs, HVAC systems, and safety checks that kept the hospital running. My crew and I were the invisible backbone. The doctors saved lives, but we made sure the lights, the machines, and the building didn't fail them. I wasn't living large. Between my mortgage, medical bills from my wife's back surgery, and tuition payments for my oldest daughter, money was tight. Overtime wasn't extra, it was survival. That extra 15-20 hours a month made the difference between breathing room and drowning. And for years I thought my boss, Director Neil Carr, understood that. He shook my hand at holiday parties, called me the most dependable guy in the department, and praised me in front of the hospital board. But loyalty is fragile when someone's greed outweighs their integrity. Because when budget cuts rolled in, Neil decided my hours and my future were the easiest to sacrifice. The worst part? The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was insidious. A casual comment here, a denied request there. Small, almost invisible cracks that slowly eroded trust until one day, the foundation crumbled under a sentence that made me feel disposable. It started with subtle changes. My overtime requests suddenly came back denied. Shifts I had already worked were adjusted in payroll. Neil called me into his office one morning, shut the door, and smiled. Evan, corporate's tightening expenses. No more overtime. If you work late, it won't be approved. Do yourself a favor and stop asking. But stopping wasn't an option. My wife's medication alone cost nearly $400 a month. My daughter's tuition bill arrived like a ticking bomb every semester. Without overtime, I was slipping fast. I went to HR, desperate. Their response? Cold. We've reviewed your hours, Mr. Marshall, and everything appears accurate. If there's a mistake, it's probably on your end. A lie. I knew it. But Neil's smirk at the end of meetings told me everything. He was cutting labor costs at my expense, and HR was covering for him. By the third month, I was pawning tools I once swore I'd never sell, pulling double shifts at a mechanic's garage just to keep lights on. I thought about quitting. I thought about giving up entirely. I began documenting everything. Notes, screenshots of payroll reports, conversations logged down to the minute. I stayed awake at night, replaying every meeting, every email, every smirk. That's when the paranoia crept in. What if I was wrong? What if it was just coincidence? But deep down I knew. Neil was exploiting every loophole, every system weakness, every human vulnerability he could find. And I realized that to protect my family I had to fight. Not just for myself, but for everyone under him. Then one night, while cleaning out a storage closet, I found something that changed everything. Buried under old inspection reports was a binder of time logs. At first it looked like routine sign-in sheets. But as I flipped through, my heart dropped. There it was, page after page of my crew's original hours. Stamped, initialed, official, but they didn't match the payroll reports. 43 hours I had worked in March, reduced to 30 on my check. 27 in April, shaved down to 15, and it wasn't just me. My entire team's hours had been sliced, manipulated, stolen. I felt a wave of shame. How could I have doubted myself for so long? How could I let Neil make me feel like I was imagining it? But then shame hardened into something stronger. Fury. He thought no one would ever look closely. He thought people like me would just roll over. That binder was more than paper. It was a weapon, and I was ready to use it. I spent the next night scanning and organizing everything, making sure every discrepancy, every manipulated hour, every forged entry was clearly documented. By sunrise, I had a dossier that even the most hardened corporate lawyer would have to respect. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment with a labor attorney downtown. I carried that binder like it was a lifeline. When I laid the documents on her desk, she raised an eyebrow. "Evan, this isn't just sloppy accounting. This is systemic wage theft. If we pursue this, your boss and the hospital could be in serious trouble." We filed a lawsuit. Almost immediately, the hospital's attorneys came after me. Emails, phone calls, veiled threats about future employment opportunities. Neil strutted around the building, smirking as if the case was already dead. Walking into that courtroom weeks later, I felt the odds stacked against me. The hospital had money, power, polished lawyers in expensive suits. I was just one man clutching a binder. The first day was brutal. Witnesses were coached, cross-examinations were relentless, and Neil oozed confidence. But my attorney kept calm. Every time the defense tried to twist a fact, she countered with the evidence, the numbers, the logs. Then came the emotional testimony of my team. Seeing their faces, hearing their stories, watching their hands tremble as they recounted being cheated, it drove the point home. This wasn't just about me. This was about justice. By the third day, I realized something crucial. Power intimidates, but it cannot replace truth. And truth, I had it in every page, every signature, every timestamp in that binder. Neil took the stand with the arrogance of a man who had lied his way through life. "Mr. Marshall is mistaken," he said smoothly. "Our system is audited regularly. If he believes hours were miscalculated, it's because he doesn't understand how payroll functions." The attorneys for the hospital echoed him. HR staff testified that all records were accurate. The judge nodded politely but didn't seem convinced. Then my attorney placed the binder on the table. "Your Honor, these are original timesheets from Mr. Marshall's department. They are signed and time-stamped. When compared against official payroll, you'll see consistent discrepancies, all subtracting hours, never adding." Neil leaned back, still smug. Anyone could have forged those. That's when my attorney played the ace. A whistleblower from accounting had come forward anonymously with internal emails. In them, Neil bragged about slashing 300 overtime hours last quarter and calling it a personal win for the budget. The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned forward, scanning the emails. His expression hardened. "Mr. Carr," the judge said, voice sharp. "Do you deny sending these messages?" Neil stammered. His lawyers tried to object, but it was over. The gavel came down. "This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Damages and back pay are awarded. The defendant engaged in deliberate wage theft." Neil's face drained of color. His arrogance shattered in an instant. When the judgment was read, I felt a weight lift off my chest. The court awarded me full back pay plus damages, not just enough to erase debt, but enough to finally give my family breathing room. Neil, the man who once threatened to erase me, left the courthouse with his head down. His legacy of cost-cutting was now documented as theft, his reputation in ruins. I walked out with my attorney, binder in hand, feeling taller than I had in years. For once, the system didn't bury the little guy. For once, truth cut through power. And I realized something. When he told me I was replaceable, he was right. But not in the way he meant. I replaced fear with resolve. I replaced silence with proof. And I replaced his threat with the truth that destroyed him. The experience changed me. I became more vigilant, more protective of my rights and my team, and more confident in standing up to injustice. My story is proof. One person armed with truth can challenge even the strongest fortress of greed and corruption. If you believe corruption always gets exposed, subscribe to Lawful Payback. The next story will leave you stunned.